My name is Dalton Grant, a former high jumper, three-time Olympian, European champion, Commonwealth Games champion, board director of London 2012 Big Team, bringing the Olympics to London. Welcome to the Dalton Grant Academy show. In this series, we'll be having special guests talking about a wide range of topics, having the right mindset, overcoming various obstacles in your life. Today's show is sponsored by Rhythm Kitchen, Caribbean food fresh off the grill. Our guest today is Hollywood writer, director, filmmaker, Nnegest Likké.
Hi, Dalton. It's an honor to be here. Thank you. I'm in the presence of greatness.
Thank you. What really drove you or turned you around to kind of achieve the things that you've achieved so far in life?
Well, I'm a storyteller. So whenever you're telling stories, you have to start from the beginning. And I come from a very loving background in terms of my family. But environmentally, I came from what they call a very rough neighborhood, what they derogatorily call the ghetto. Basically a place of struggle. I've always been a very creative person, but I was an at-risk youth. And what they call at-risk youth here in America is basically youth that get caught up in the streets and stuff like that. But what saved me basically was my family, having a good family. And I think a family is the biggest foundation that a person can have. But I've always been somewhat a actor or activist or an act-outer.
Let's talk about being an activist. What is it like in America? What's through, your eyes, experience? What would you like to be done? Because obviously, is this history repeating itself, or did history carry on and prolong?
Well, what's happening right now in America, but I think across the world actually is what feels like a real uprising. Black people have been historically marginalized. We were either enslaved in the Americas or colonized in Africa. So now what's going on? There's the coronavirus going on, and then George Floyd is killed brutally. What happened to George Floyd is a common everyday thing in America. But I think the tipping point happened because things and people are under so much pressure right now. What they call a tipping point is when something just pops. And the timing of what happened with George Floyd, with all the pressure, it's just time. So this uprising is Black people crying out saying, we're tired of being oppressed. We're tired of this systematic oppression that's happening to us. So all these movements, like little fires are breaking out all over the place. It started in America, but it's also happening in Africa right now. Dalton, I saw a video of you actually starting a little fire in England even. So all over the world, Black people are rising up because we're ready to be empowered and ready to have our freedom once and for all. So that's kind of what's going on. And you introduced me as an activist. I'm actually, there's different kind of activists. I'm a filmmaker and I use film as activism. I'm a comedy writer. I love writing comedy, entertainment, but I use that to get messages across to our people that empower Black people, that empower Africans, that unite the Pan-African community and the African diaspora. So what I have always been doing, even before the movement, the uprising that's happening right now, has led up to this moment. So I'm glad to be here talking about this with you, who's all the way in England, and me here in America, and your other guests on the show, and how we're coming together to kind of talk about how our individual histories and our paths have led to this very moment where there's a revolution going on with Black people around the world.
That's very interesting. And like me, like I said before, it's great that you have that platform, Hollywood, to, deliver the message in the right way. For me as a person, I'm a proud Black individual. So, the important thing in life, the fruit might be sour because the root is not good. But as long as the root is sweet and the fruit don't look sweet, it will taste sweet. It's all about foundation. And that's when right. I'm getting a foundation from you, my foundation is family, who you are. So give us a little insight about your parents, for instance. What kind of lessons they gave you, rubbed off on you, and made you that person today?
So I grew up in a bicultural family. My mother's African American and what they call descendants of slaves. My mother's ancestors were brought here through the slave trade. So she's Black American. And my father's Ethiopian. My father was a foreign exchange student going to school in America from Ethiopia. And he and my mom met during the civil rights movement. And I was a product of that. So both of my parents are actually revolutionaries. My father, who was in the United States studying, loved what was going on in America. My mother was a Black Panther. She's still here with us, but in the civil rights era, she was a Black Panther. And my father loved what was going on and said, after I finish my studies, I want to take this movement back to Ethiopia. So I actually got the opportunity to grow up in America, but travel to Ethiopia to see my family a lot. So I got both experiences growing up in America and traveling to Africa a lot. And what's interesting, which is something that informed me as a filmmaker, is that I grew up in a low-income area. I grew up in public housing called the projects in America. America is the richest country in the world. So I grew up in the richest country in the world, but in the poorest part. And when I traveled to Africa, where my father's family is from, and Africa, as we know, is presented as the poorest place in the world in terms of the people, not the resources, but the people. But when I first traveled to Africa, I went to stay with my family. They were actually wealthy, and they have maids and servants and what they call servants for everything. They were rich. My father was killed and assassinated working in the palace as a high-ranking official in the Ethiopian palace. So the irony of what I had seen on TV, coming from the richest country in the world, living in the poorest part, going to visit the place that is portrayed as the poorest part of the world and living in complete luxury. It was like a mind-blowing kind of experience as a child. And that informed me. And I realized that the media had so much power. And I was already into the arts and loved film. And so later on, that irony and seeing that if we show Africa in a powerful way, people will believe it's powerful. If we show Africa in a poor, needy, pitiful way, people will believe whatever you put in front of them. So I realized the power of film. Film is more powerful, and media images are more powerful than a gun. So I realized that. And so I said, I love film. I want to use my art as activism to, use entertainment and comedy and romance and all the good things that we love about film to actually portray the kinds of images and change the narrative. So that's kind of what my background is and how I use film as activism and as my life's work.
Well done. For me, it's an insight, the importance of media, news, very important. And it's just like the insight now, like you said, that your mom of the Black Panther, but it's so interesting. Is she still alive? If she's still alive.
And she's still very much active.
Yeah, right. And how does she see with Trump now and where we're going? And what does she think, or do you think we can put in place to make it different now?
Now, my mother doesn't really like what's going on right now. Not in terms of the uprising, that's good. But what the system has done is strategically assassinated or taken out our leaders. Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, all of our leaders, Martin Luther King. I mean, we could name them all. Fred Hampton. So many of our leaders here in the United States were taken out. And those leaders haven't been replaced. What African Americans are kind of missing right now, even with this uprising, is that kind of leadership. And that's predominantly because every time a leader starts to rise up, the powers that be strategically takes them out. And so that's very real. And people don't really understand that, but that's very real. So what is missing right now, that the era of my mom had when she was in the civil rights movement, was leaders everywhere. So I think that's what's missing right now, but it's encouraging that people are starting to uprise, but I would say we need to know what we want. And most importantly, in my opinion, there's a two-sided approach that we need to take. Of course, we need our rights. African Americans are demanding reparations, which I'm in full support of. African Americans built America. They are deserving of reparations. At the same time, we have so much power. And this is not just African Americans. These are Africans, Black people in the diaspora, and Black Americans. We have the power. If we come together and bring our money together, bring our resources together, spend Black dollars on Black products and Black businesses, we have the power to turn things around. So we have a lot more power than we use. For example, instead of buying that designer brand name purse that belongs to, some great Italian designer, what if we spent that money on a handbag designer from Africa or whatever? All that money goes back into our community. So it needs to be a two-pronged approach that we have. We need to demand the rights that are due us for slavery and colonization and reparations and whatever goes along with that, equality, job equality, economic equality, political equality. But equally, or even more importantly, we need to understand our own power and what we can do and start utilizing it more.
I agree. Well said. I do believe that it's about respecting one another and it's what we can add value as a race. So for me, I understand in the UK, the struggle. I've been through that struggle. I was the first Black world-class high jumper in Europe. I knew what I had to go through. And it's really funny when I meet people and they would tell me through their experience, what they did. They're talking from, school or from college. And I've tried to share my experience from being to the Olympics or being a board director of London 2012 and bring the Olympics. If I've been at the top of the mountain, the way I look at things is different from you at the bottom of the mountain. And I think we need to respect one another. I think we're being damaged mentally, conditioned to be a certain way, but we need to condition ourselves, to challenge ourselves, to see if we're thinking the right way. A pleasure to have you here today and giving your insight. If you had a magic wand, how do you use the magic wand to the best of your value? Who's going to use it from mankind? How would you use it?
If I had a magic wand in the arena of social change, I would awaken all Black people right now to their inherent beauty, power, and history. We have a powerful history. We come from kings and queens. We have a rich lineage. And we've been cut off, kind of like a tree that's been cut down. And then we've just been scattered about, all the branches scattered about around the world. If I had a magic wand, I would bring all those branches back together, replant that tree into the ground, get all those nutrients, put on our crown, our king and queenly crowns, and claim our rightful place in society right now. That's what I would do.
Wow. Powerful. Well, what can I say? Thank you so much for you taking your time out in your busy schedule.
And I want to say thank you so much for putting this on. It takes courage. You are an Olympian. You're a famous athlete. And now you're moving over into the arena to move your empowerment beyond. And this is what I mean by empowerment. You're moving your influence onto this area. And anybody that's watching this, when you support this series, you support you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dalton.
That's what I said. Not me. Thank you for having me because you came on the show. Well said. Today's show is sponsored by Rhythm Kitchen, Caribbean food fresh off the grill. To find out more about them, please click their link in the description below.